Hello again from Ayrstone Productivity. Today I want to show you how to install your Ayrstone AyrMesh Hub2n. So starting out, when you open the box, you'll find the hub at the top here, along with two 10-foot Ethernet cables and a copy of our quick start instructions. Now focusing in on the hub itself, it comes in a nice plastic weatherproof case with a mounting bracket on the back that mounts easily to a flat or a curved surface. On the bottom is a door that opens easily with your thumb like this, slides open, and you can see the Ethernet port and reset switch. And goes right back on. And on the top is the antenna connector with a little plastic covering on it. You can take that cover off. Next is the antenna. As you can see, it's about 6 inches long and has a connector on the bottom that threads onto the top of the hub. The next piece is the power supply, a little hard to get out. Now on the bottom you can see that there are two ports marked PoE and LAN. And those are Ethernet ports for Ethernet cables. The last pieces are the electric cable for the power supply, which just plugs into the wall. It has a little plastic protector on it that we can slip off like that. A zip tie to help us mount the hub onto a tube or a pipe, and a couple of screws just in case we want to mount it into something made of wood. Now I have my router set up. That's my DSL modem on the right, and I have internet access so we can get going. The first thing to do is to assemble the hub by screwing the antenna onto the top, not too tight, and then take the door off the bottom with a thumb. Now what we'll do is set that aside and assemble the power supply. Just plug the power cable into one end of the power supply like that, and then we'll plug one of the Ethernet cables into the LAN port of the power supply and set it aside. The other end of the cable just gets plugged into one of the LAN ports on the router just like this. Okay, now we'll finish assembling the hub. We'll take the other Ethernet cable, plug one end of it into the bottom of the hub there, and then we'll take the other end of that Ethernet cable and plug it into the PoE port of the power supply. Just like that. And then we can plug the power supply into the wall, and if we look at our router, we can see that the hub is showing up there as one of the port lights is lit. And if we look on the router, we can see that it's taken out an IP address. Next, I want to show you the light pattern on the hub. So when it first starts to boot, the top light will flash, and then it will start this chase pattern from bottom to top. That indicates that the hub is checking into AyrMesh.com and downloading its configuration information. It will then configure itself, and just the top light will come on and stay on, indicating that it's configured and ready for installation. This also indicates that it's in gateway mode. When you look at AyrMesh.com, you'll see that it's checked in and added itself to your account. So since it's been initialized, we can now disassemble the hub to get ready for installation. So we'll take out the Ethernet cable and put the door back on so I don't lose it. And we'll disconnect the other end of that cable from the PoE side of the power supply. Now I'll go get my long cable here, and I'll plug one end of that into the PoE side of the power supply. And then I'm going to run the other end of that cable up through a hole in the ceiling, across the attic, and out a vent on the side of my house. Here's a hole in the ceiling with the cable going through it, and here is the vent on the side of my house with the cable coming out of it. So now I'm up on the roof, and here's the hub. I'm going to remove that flat bracket because I'm going to mount it on a pole to keep it high above my roof. So all I have to do is put it up against the pole, put the zip tie through the hole in that bracket, and fasten up the zip tie just like this. Now I can just tighten that zip tie down and rotate it around, and that hub is securely mounted to the pole. Next, I'm going to go get the cable that I fished up through the attic, take off the door, and put the cable into the Ethernet port underneath the hub. and then put that door back on to keep it weather tight. And the installation is nearly done. The last thing I'm going to do is take another zip tie and tie that cable to the pole to serve as a strain relief so that the cable doesn't pull itself out of the hub. So now you're finished with most of the installation. Now if you left the power supply plugged in, the lights on the hub should be coming on. They'll go through the same boot sequence as before with the top light flashing and then the chase sequence. If it's a gateway hub, it'll end up looking just like this. The top light, indicating gateway mode, will be on steady, the bottom power light will be on steady, and the second from the bottom Ethernet light will be flashing. If you're installing a remote hub, the signal lights will come on to help you ensure the hub is getting good signal. Here I'm unscrewing the antenna and screwing it back on so you can see how the signal lights work. So the final point I want to make is about cables. Always dress your cables so they don't flap around in the wind, and always put in a drip loop. Here you see the cable coming out of the vent on my house. I always make sure that it goes downwards, and I even sometimes just use a zip tie to create a real loop so that it doesn't pull back up into the vent. This way any moisture coming down the cable will just drip onto the roof and not come into your house. And that's about it. Please check ayrstone.com/support for more hints and tips, and thanks again from your friends at Ayrstone Productivity.